Hello folks, today I'm going to be showing you how to solve one of the common problems that the 4-speed trigger suffers, and that is jumping out of first gear, which is annoying and it's no good for the gears or the rider. It usually happens under load when you're assaulting a hill, right when you need all the power you can get and all the momentum you can muster, and then you find you're going along and all of a sudden the bike flicks out of first into second. Now, to understand why it does this, you have to realise that first gear on these 4 speeds is very strongly spring loaded. So when you select first on the trigger, you will feel a lot of resistance as you move the lever. That is spring resistance in the hub, and then as you pedal you will hear a click as first gear engages. When you move to second, if you just flick the lever, it will move violently to second, or it might even bypass that and go straight to third. That's all because of the strength of the spring pressure inside the hub for first gear. And that is why the trigger whirs, because the parts inside the ratchet mechanism, it's holding against that very strong spring pressure. Now, also for that reason, when you are making the change from first to second, you should always keep hold of the lever when you make the change. You should never just flick it in like you would ordinarily. You should make a controlled but a sure but steady change into second. So now you understand why these 4 speeds suffer the jumping out of first gear. I'll show you how to deal with it, what to look for on the trigger, because the hub itself is very rarely to blame. It's usually just wear in the trigger. The 4-speed hubs do actually seem quite robust, even though they're not as user friendly as the 3 speeds. They seem to be pretty robust. You just have to take care of them and use a bit of mechanical sympathy when you're using them. Now, this is a trigger from one of my parts bikes. It's very badly seized up, so it's, as you've seen, it's very stiff to operate. So yours would be nice and free to move and nice and well oiled and smooth. This has been, neglected and disused for ages. You don't have to remove the trigger from the bike to do what I'm about to show you. I've just removed it to make it easier to film. So you can make these repairs and adjustments with the trigger on the handlebars. You don't have to remove it or do anything with the cable at all. You can do this, what I'm about to show you, with the trigger in situ on the bike. So now I've got that out of the way, what the tools you will need are an old blunt screwdriver and a set of long nose pliers, or ordinary pliers, preferably without the serrated teeth going all the way to the end. Preferably a set of ordinary pliers, just with a flat bit at the end. But yeah, long nose pliers are good. So what you do is, first of all, you examine for wear. Now I'll just simulate first gear on this. Imagine this on the bike, levers in first, gears are in first, and you can see this part here. That is what holds the trigger in the gear positions. You've got this hinged segment here, and when you move the lever, that comes up, and don't forget this is very, very seized up. That comes up, and the spring pressure of the hub pulls it into second gear. Now note this, you'll see the segment, you'll see the segment is below this ratchet here, so that's not going anywhere. So now I'll move it back into first. Again, very stiff to operate because it's one from the parts bike, but that is now in first, and you will see the position of the segment. It's only half on the teeth. Now if I push down with the screwdriver, I can get that to go in further. Now it's because that segment only sits half on the ratchet, and because of the heavy spring pressure in first gear on these 4 speeds, this part wears, the segment wears, and eventually you get the jumping out of first. So to cure this, what you do, now I should say, if you've got a trigger in very good condition cosmetically, you may wish to put a bit of masking tape over the face just to protect that. So what you do is you lever up the spring like so, and this won't cause any damage, but you just lever up the spring like that out of the way, and you'll get a good idea of this spring tension. That's important. And then you just pick this up like so, that comes up, and you can then examine the profile of this. Is there any wear on it? Because sometimes they are worn at an angle, and that's no good. That contributes to the problem. This is actually looking quite nice and square in profile without any signs of obvious wear. But if you find yours is worn at an angle, with a very fine tooth file, straight edge file, you can just file this down to a square profile again at this end that acts on the ratchets. So that's one of the first things to do, and you can do this step by step. So if you find your mechanism here, this part is worn, first of all file it down square again, just take enough off just to make a nice square profile. Then you can pop it back together and try it on the bike. If that fails and you're still experiencing jumping out of gear, the next thing you do is with this is where the pliers come in handy. You get that just like that, and then with the pliers you can make sure it's still on the edge there, so you can bend this, you can bend the spring a little, just a little, to increase the pressure on this segment. So this spring is now pushing more onto that segment, which will assist it staying in gear. So that's step 2. Then if you still got problems jumping out of gear after you've tried it again, giving it a test run, if you've still got problems with it jumping out of gear, the next thing to do is take this, and again that's why pliers without teeth are preferable for this, because the teeth of course make marks. The next thing to do is to take this and then bend that down slightly. If you just bend it down ever so slightly, it will feel quite tough, but you get the idea. I'm not going to do it much on this because I don't think there's actually anything wrong with this trigger other than it needing a very good clean. So the next thing to do is bend that down ever so slightly so it's digging more into the teeth. Then you replace the spring again, of course, pop that back in. You see there it went in with a nice snap, and then you can see now that the segment is actually sitting a lot lower, you know, on the teeth there, the pawl or whatever its proper name is. So that now, instead of sitting just halfway up and only engaging half of the teeth, it's now sitting square flush against that, so that is not now going to jump out of gear. Then you give it a test ride. You may have to adjust up the gears again ever so slightly at the hub end, because of course you've made a slight adjustment, but that should see you on the road again, and without the infuriating and detrimental problem of jumping out of gear. So I hope that has been of use, and you should now be able to effect the repairs without expending any great effort. And as I say, you can do this all with the trigger on the bike. So good luck, and let me know if this has been of use.